Hi, everyone.
I see the
Welcome to
numbers
our.
coming up.
Is everyone coming in? Am I froze?
No, you're good.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to give everyone else a few. Like we're at 4:01. Welcome to everyone who's joining. Oh, good. It's always fun to watch the numbers go up. I'm going to just pause for a second and let the room fill. I know that this is like dinner time or past dinner time for so many. So thank you for joining us.
I see Shayna. Hi, Shayna. I
No
see
way.
Kelly. Hey.
Shelly here.
hmm
Awesome.
I see Naomi. Hi, Naomi.
It's always so fun to watch everyone come on board. All right, so if you're logging into this Zoom room, you are joining the Conversation with Caregivers, hosted by Psych Armor and our wonderful presenters here today, Michelle and Issa Marie. I like to give everyone just a few more seconds since I see the numbers are rolling. I'll go to 4:03 and then we'll start the introductions.
Hey, Carol. Hi.
I guess I can just say hi over here. I'm over here typing in the chat. Hi.
Yeah.
Hi, Carol.
Yeah, that's what we want this to be, as a conversation, right? So I think this is before you guys start to just talk amongst each other. This is your time to say hi to your peoples that are coming in while they're all rolling in. I see the numbers growing so fast. I don't want to get started until everybody else is in the room. And it's like one of those things now that we're all zooming it from one place to another. And
Yeah.
for like 3 minutes late, we miss introduction. So happy Thursday. All right. I am going to kick it off. What do you guys think? Will we have enough time for everyone to catch up? Okay, good.
Sounds good.
So good afternoon still here on the Pacific Coast, or good evening to those of you that are on the East Coast or wherever you might be dialing into. I am Tina Atherall, the CEO here at Psych Armor. I am so excited to have this amazing series called Conversation with Caregivers. Tonight, we'll be talking about financial wellness. We are so glad that you came to join this important conversation. This series is sponsored by USAA, and it is an opportunity for all of us to virtually engage with fellow military and veteran caregivers about difficult issues that have been exacerbated by COVID-19 and the pandemic. So these events are intended for all of you. Before we looked at the military and veteran caregivers, but I know from our previous conversations, it has been such a joy to see so many community members or providers that have come on board to these conversations that also wanted to learn more, whether they were in a healthcare setting or whatever their setting was. They were here to understand more. So Michelle and Issa Marie, I think that's so important for you to know too, as well as you start your conversations, who is in the room. I do want to give a shout out to my partner here, Jenna Pryor. She hides behind the Psych Armor logo. But this really is her work of art. She spends a lot of time getting to know all of you, and I know that you've spent a lot of time together. She is an incredible individual in this community and space, and has really created a great opportunity. So for all of you that are in the chat box, and I know many of you have joined us before, we were discussing before you all came online that, creating these virtual opportunities are actually so amazing because so many more of you get to join. But we also know that sometimes it can be limiting for you because you're not able necessarily to join in the conversation. What we have found is that we 100% have used that chat box. So although Michelle and Issa Marie are going to get going on a conversation here, we really do encourage you guys to support each other in the chats. Jenna takes a lot of time, as well as her social work students. Yes, I am giving out a shout out to all the social workers out there. It is Social Work Month still. So they spend a lot of time diving through your chats and making sure that we're pulling out the resources you're talking about, pulling out the comments. She also is investing heavily in the evaluation, which I'm going to talk about at the end. So please use your chat box. Please use the best that we can, the technology that we have, and let's make this a full conversation. So I'm going to go into some bios really hard for me to read them because I'd rather just talk about these amazing women and the way that they've intersected in my life, but that's not a real bio. So let me introduce first Michelle. She is a certified financial social worker, a regional social worker and liaison to Gold Star families at the national nonprofit Hope for the Warriors. She's a military spouse, and she has volunteered with military family readiness programs for over 20 years. I am now going to adapt her bio, and as we just learned, she is soon to be a military mom as well. So she's working for that next title. She is, she's currently retired spouse liaison for the Military Spouse Association out of 29 Palms, and is married to, well, we got to update this. Oh no, it just said soon to be retired. You are now a retired Sergeant Major Pompos. Their son just enlisted in the United States Coast Guard. See, this is what happened when you guys get me to read these things, because I always go off script and I just want to talk. Okay. Isa Marie, I'm actually glad we have this bio about you, because again, I just made up all the stories that I wanted to make up around you because it's been so incredible getting to know you. And then I read this and I'm like, holy cow, this girl. So 8.5 years as a multiple launch rocket system repairer. That is like badass. Completing 2 tours in Iraq and serving a total of 27 months in combat. In 2012, she became a caregiver to her husband after he stepped on an improvised explosive device while on deployment in Afghanistan, resulting in the loss of both of his legs and a moderate traumatic brain injury. Isa Marie was so overwhelmed by the support generously offered to her family and receiving from other nonprofits that she was honored to join the staff at one of my favorite nonprofits. I talk about you guys all the time. Jenna can attest to this. The Farmers Veterans Coalition, a national nonprofit dedicating to serving veterans in agriculture. I do think that you'll probably weave also why that organization has been so important to financial wellness and growth for your family. So I'm super excited for this conversation. I'm going off script for a second just to say, as we talk about financial wellness, we are hoping that in a part of this series, some of the things that people have asked us to do is really get into the gritty conversations. So by fact that Michelle is a financial social worker, it is definitely a growing field in the social work profession, because it's not always about your IRA accounts. And I hope most of you can understand this. It's actually about really hard emotional feelings around money. And when things aren't going well, there's usually a financial component. So being a social worker that's able to work from the lens of financial wellness, or maybe not so financially well, but getting you to that place and working through the emotional factors of that, everything from the shame to the guilt to you layer it, right? And then the caregiver lens on top of that. So I'm just super excited for this conversation. It's another encouragement for me to all of you who don't know all of each other. There's 84 of you in this room, but just to know this isn't supposed to be an advertisement for some sort of, great financial program. It really is to dig into some of the hard issues that go along with money and life and all that stuff that's also related to our community. So kick it off, girls. I will be quiet in the background.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tina. I'm so happy to be here. I was able to join the other 2 conversations with caregivers, and it was such a wonderful experience for me. Michelle is really, I think, more of the financial expert. I'm going to throw that on her. I am happy to talk about my experiences as a caregiver. As Tina had mentioned, my husband does have a traumatic brain injury, which actually plays a big role in our conversations with one another, especially around finances. I mean, just communicating in general is very difficult and challenging. I think like 99% of the world's problems could be solved if we had better communication. But when you're communicating with someone who has injuries such as a traumatic brain injury, or if they're on, pain meds or sleeping meds, like it makes it even harder to talk about, things as difficult as finances. So this is really, really challenging to have those conversations internally.
Hi, thanks for having me, everyone. I saw in the chat that we've already had some good questions. Someone asked, what is a financial social worker? Well, I think that it is quite a new term, and to just kind of preface, I am not a financial planner. I am not studying business. I'm not studying money. What I'm looking at Well, when I started at Hope, they asked me if I was interested in becoming a financial certified social worker, and I didn't know what that meant. What is that? I'm not good with my own finances. How am I going to do that? And they actually have a certification for social workers that you can do. You can do it even not as a social worker. They have other programs also available if you're interested in financial wellness. I believe it's financialsocialwork.com or something like that. No ad here, but I went on there and I did the certified program and tested and received my certification. And a lot of it goes back to your history with money, looking at everything behind the scenes of how you think about money. How did you grow up with money? Who taught you about money? How do you feel about money? How does your spouse feel about money? How can you guys talk about money together? How does different just your life cycle affect your money? You were in the military, you got out. How was that transition affected by money? These are all issues with your financial wellness. We found at Hope that the different domains of wellness were all affected by finances. At Hope, we do have assistance for financial needs, and we had so many veterans reaching out to us for help financially. And we thought, okay, well, we can help financially, but then after that, what happens? Do you know how to move forward from that financial struggle? And it affects everything in your life, your emotional life, your family life, your future life. And so we try and help at Hope with learning each other's financial wellness, where our strengths and weaknesses lie, and help our spouses and caregivers create a dialogue with their veterans so that they can both plan their financial goals for the future.
You know, Michelle, you mentioned that transition and how that affects your financial wellness. So as Tina had mentioned, I actually served in the Army for 8 years myself. And my husband, whenever he got injured, I just happened to be in that transition period where I was ending my time in service. I actually got out of the military 3 days after my husband got injured, which was totally, obviously by coincidence. But I heard many stories from other caregivers where they're in a similar situation where they had two incomes. They went from, they were working full time, and then, their spouses or their, even if it's their daughter or their son, I don't want to just say that caregivers are only spouses, because I know that that's not true. But in my situation, it was my husband, and I went from working full time and we had two incomes down to one. And it was such a shock that we weren't even prepared for it at all. It was just such a shock. And I heard it all the time from other caregivers. And I imagine you probably get a lot of situations like that coming to you.
Yeah, we do have a program for gap in pay assistance for those types of settings. But as I got to know some of my clients and have at Hope, we developed a program where they can come to us and do one-on-one counseling sessions. And a lot of veterans and spouses, especially during COVID now too, the same things are happening where people are losing jobs, getting furloughed. We never know when we're going to get relief from the government. It's not stable, and it creates a lot of stress, especially with children now out in school, and maybe the spouse can't work because the children are home. And nobody was prepared for it. It wasn't anything we knew was coming. It was just a shock. And that's very common also when you're getting out medically retired early or injured, and you have to just have that jump right out. And then also just different times during your caregiving, like my husband has TBI. I don't know, looking forward to the future, how much longer he'll be able to work. I have to be able to plan for the future and know that our finances are going to be stable, even if he can't work, or if something happened to me, or if I want to send my kid to college and now I don't know if he's going to be in school. Now he came home and joined the Coast Guard because he didn't want to be online college. So it's just everything is affected by our finances.
Oh, and COVID it's impacted obviously the entire world, but I think about my situation in COVID. So as Tina mentioned, I work for Farmer Veteran Coalition. So I work full time. And then this time last year, I was pulling my hair out because I was homeschooling 3 children and working full time from home, which it's so sad that that's not a crazy story. I mean, that was the majority of people, right? Everybody was working from home and taking care of their children and homeschooling their children from home. But then as a caregiver, you have that additional stress of also taking care of another person, another adult. And it was so challenging for me. I almost considered quitting my job, which I know for some people, it's like, oh my gosh, a lot of people lost their job because of COVID. And here I was considering quitting my job just to keep my own sanity. But one of the reasons why I actually chose not to was because I was worried about our finances. I was worried about going from 2 incomes down to 1, because I had already experienced that whenever my husband first got injured in 2012. We went from 2 incomes to 1, and it was just a shocking experience that we weren't really prepared for. And so even though COVID, I was really strongly considering quitting just to keep my sanity. Really my concerns for our finances are what kept me in there. And luckily my children are going to school now, so I'm very happy about that. But it really did, that concern about our finances is what kept me working and homeschooling and just pushing through it. And yeah, it was really, really challenging. It's been really hard for everybody, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Even me personally, I worked from home before COVID, but it was still a struggle. And I know, with the kid coming back home and that transition, and I think everybody just struggles a lot with just change in general that you're not going to understand or know that have a warning for. And I think that there's another good question in here about how do you talk about money and the difficulty surrounding just talking about it. And I always tell my clients that the best way to alleviate your financial stress is to communicate with your couple, with your loved one, with your caregiver, with your veteran. The best way is to communicate, but everybody is scared to communicate, or they're angry to communicate, or they're shamed to communicate, or they blame when they communicate, especially about finances. For some reason, it's always the saver marries the spender. Why is it that way? I don't know, but that's the way it is. And so like I said before, before I started the training, I did the budgeting, but we were in a ton of debt. And my husband didn't ever want to talk about it because he thought that it was just something that we're going to have to live with our whole life. It's never going to go away. And a lot of people just want to ignore that debt. And what happens is when you ignore it, it builds up. The stress from it builds up. You're not looking at it every day, but you are looking at your app every day and checking your account every day. And that stress is building. And I think the best way to start the conversation is to just make it small and start making it at a positive level. Like, what are your goals for our financial wellness? Where do you see us in 10 years with our finances? What does retirement look like to you? What do you want to build for our children's future? How do you see us working together on this? How can we work together on this? Can we meet every payday and talk about the budget together? Can we meet after I pay the bills and you look over it? Can we make a schedule of talking about it and just start in little steps and try not to blame each other and try and be open? Because usually both of you probably had learned finances in a totally different way. And what your goals might not be what his goals are, or vice versa. And neither one is wrong. Try and compromise in the middle and just start that conversation is the best. And I promise the more you talk about it, the easier it gets. And the more goals that you reach, the better you feel. So, and you just start small. I teach my clients even $1 extra on your credit card payment can save you thousands in interest in the long run. And over the process of learning the training, me and my husband have probably paid down about 30,000 some in debt. And COVID is not always such a bad thing. We spent a lot more time at home, not eating out, budgeting more, putting an actual amount on how much we wanted to save, and that type of thing was really helpful. Just making goals. We wanted to get a travel trailer. We could do something after retirement, just making that fun goal too. Like, don't always talk about the debt, talk about the fun stuff you want to plan. Do you want to have a movie night once a month that we can splurge on instead of going out and spending $100 on sushi? Just fun stuff to try and see what they're interested in.
Right. You are so right that having that conversation it's hard to do, right? I mean, I think I already mentioned that, like, at least for me with my veteran, it's really hard to even have that conversation just because talking about finances alone is hard. But from the caregiver perspective, it's hard to have that conversation without, when you consider the veteran's limitations. So like when I mentioned my husband's traumatic brain injury, I mean, he has these limitations that make communicating in general very hard. And so like his attention span is, it's really, really short, very short attention span. He'll forget conversations that we had. So even if we talked about finances and we came up with, a plan, he would forget all about it. It's like the conversation never happened. And so here I am thinking, we went through this trouble of having this conversation, and then he completely forgot about it, which actually led to us starting to write things down. So like that was something that we had to do. And it was because of his injury that we really had to, it's probably a good idea anyways, but because of his injuries and because he was forgetting things, we had to write it down and create this kind of plan for, okay, these are what our goals are. I'm an Excel nerd. I love Excel. And so I created a spreadsheet because that's just who I am. I like spreadsheets. And that was really, really helpful for us. But even still, like that conversation about more around like, what are your goals with our money and what are my goals? Like that conversation is hard to have. And it's even more challenging when you take into consideration if they're on pain meds, for example. There's another example. My husband has a hard time sleeping. And so he was taking pretty strong sleeping meds. And I would start having these conversations with him, when we're laying in bed, because that's really the only time that we ever get to even see each other. And I was realizing that he was just completely out of it because he had taken his sleeping pill already. And so it's like, that was bad timing. I probably shouldn't have started that conversation at that time. But just doing it is really the best way to get through that, right? I know it's really challenging to have those conversations, but it's really important to have them.
Yeah. And everybody's budgeting might look different. And a lot of times, I don't want to be your mom and tell you what to do, because that does not help our relationship. And I want you to be part of this conversation. So what we figured out the best for us to do was I figured out the budget, and then we sit down and talk about it and see if that's good and what we're going to do with our leftover money, if we have any. We have more now that we've saved more, but are we going to put so much in emergency savings? Are we going to add more to pay off credit cards? What do we want to do this month? And he's involved in that part of the discussion. And then it's also helpful to maybe print out, if they don't remember their purchases, print out last year's purchases, see which ones were good, which ones were kind of, we could have probably saved money there. Or maybe you see spending habits time frame during the day, like maybe they get up in the middle of the night and buy stuff and then they don't remember in the morning or whatever. Maybe you could have an alert set on your credit card. Hey, what are you doing? Or, just little tips. Like if you feel like you need to buy something every week, maybe we can set aside this money for that. Or maybe if you're really good and we save this much money this month, you can get that football ticket or something like that. Or like my husband, he does all of the credit checks. So we always have our credit karma checks, and they will ping him every time our score goes up or if it goes down, and then he feels like that's his job, so he likes to do that. And so just think of small things that they can do. Maybe they're, you know, processing the payment every month and writing it down for you, but you're doing all the addition and subtraction. Or maybe they're just maybe they're in charge of telling you when you're supposed to pay the bill. I tend to pay everything monthly, but some people like to pay it, you know, the week before it's due, or maybe it's better for your credit to pay it twice a month. There's little tips and tricks that I sometimes teach to help better your credit scores and things like that. And they could be in charge of just remembering those things, and they could have an alarm on their phone to remind you, so that everybody shares the responsibility. And no one feels like they're, like, if they really want the responsibility, then, you know, let's double check each other, or that type of thing. So, because we want to be inclusive, right? We want everyone to be involved, but we also don't want things to get forgotten, and we're all human. Sometimes I forget to make a payment, very rare, but if I do, it'll hit my credit and he'll tell me, hey, what happened? Scold me, which I think he kind of likes, but you know, fun stuff like that. So you can make it fun, and you can also make it fun for your kids too, because you can teach them the habits. It's very important to teach them these new habits and have them be involved too. Like, they can do chores. I had one client that his kids over COVID were eating him out of house and home. So
Yes.
he had them do chores in order to make money to buy snacks from him. So like, they got monopoly money when they did chores so that they could buy snacks, and then they didn't eat the snacks all day. So, you know, you can make it fun too.
I like that you mentioned like sharing that responsibility, because I feel like with my husband, he likes having that control, I think, because, you know, there are so many things that have been out of control for him since he got injured. And so he likes having, you know, his say, obviously, in especially finances. You know, it's something that is really important to him, but he has missed paying bills and things like that. So it's hard to find that balance of, like, obviously we're still a married couple, and so obviously this is a thing that we do together, managing our finances, but also as a caregiver, like having that balance between wife and caregiver is really, really hard, because as a caregiver, I need to go back through and make sure that things got paid, and make sure, while still giving him the freedom of making those decisions himself, I have to kind of follow up behind him and make sure that things get done. And so that's really, really challenging. It's always a weird dynamic when you're married to somebody that you're providing care for, because you, like you said, you don't want, I'm not mom, I'm not here to tell you what to do, but also, you know, we have a family, and I need to make sure that the bills get paid, right? I need to make sure that the lights stay on. So it's very hard, but giving that freedom, right? Making sure that they have responsibility, and I think is really important. So I'm so glad that you mentioned that.
Yeah, and I saw some questions about like assisted living, and some questions geared more to planning for retirement, possibly living with children in the future, possibly needing long-term care needs. It looks like I do have a background with working in financial wellness at a hospital. I don't want to get too much into like those type of issues, but there are classes on Psych Armor that do talk about growing your financial wellness for your retirement years, or maybe your geriatric years, and preparing for that. There are long-term care insurances that you can pay for long-term care if that's what you want to do. But most of the time, if you're looking at assisted living, you're going to need referrals from a doctor. You're going to need, or you're going to need insurance that pays for that for that program in your state, and it varies from state to state for assisted livings. So you would have to find out in your state. DSS, or Department of Social Services, is a good place to start, because most of the time for like long-term care, you need Medicaid, and you need to apply for that insurance in order to see if you qualify. That they're going to go into your finances, and they're going to see if you qualify that way, or if you have to private pay, because it's really expensive to private pay. Mm-hmm. So you can look into that. If you're 70% disabled through the VA, your long-term care is covered. it might be through that, it might be something new. But I haven't worked in the medical for about 4 years. But if you do long-term care, does it have to, I wonder if it has to be at a VA provider center. It might be that way. Yeah, and so I think we wanted to talk more about maybe some resources for families looking for financial resources. At Hope, we do provide a lot of different resources, but one of them is our financial wellness trainings and basically one-on-one counseling on Zoom with veterans and their caregivers, or just the veteran or just with the caregiver. And we kind of go through your history with money. We go through your financial plan and outlook right now, what your goals are, creating that budget that's good sustainability for your future, and just ways to build your wealth in your pocket, and also for your whole family and your whole outlook. Because if you're planned and ahead of the future, hopefully, and plan for financially, it does help a lot. So I know you wanted to talk about some other resources, Isa.
Yeah, whenever I think about resources, I try to think about what we've used in my family. And really, I kind of go to two different places. I go to like the long-term sustainable, like you need to have an idea, you need to have financial literacy, you need to have an idea of what your long-term goals are, you need to have kind of a financial plan within your family. But then there are these kind of immediate financial situations that just happen, right? That just come up, and it's not for lack of planning, it's just because sometimes stuff happens. A perfect example is whenever my husband got injured, I was actually driving from North Carolina to Walter Reed at the time, and then my car broke down. And I was like, oh, great. Like I'm not going through enough right now. Now we went from 2 incomes down to 1, and now we have a car that's broken down. There were nonprofits that were there to help me fix my car. There are nonprofits like Semper Fi Fund that they have emergency financial assistance, and Operation Homefront, they have, I think it's called critical financial assistance. They have Yellow Ribbon Fund. They helped my family immensely. In fact, they were the ones who helped pay for my car that broke down. So there are these programs. The VFW has a unmet needs grant. So they offer, some, it's not a long-term solution, but it's, if you have a short, immediate need for financial assistance, there are these programs that are out there to help. And I just heard about the Rescue Act, and I know that there are some copay forgiveness. There's something about copay forgiveness within the Rescue Act. So there are programs that are out there for short-term financial assistance. Definitely, it's not something you want to just rely on. Obviously, you want to have a good grasp on your finances long-term. And that's where I think definitely a program like Hope for the Warriors, that I think it's a great program to get an idea of what your financial needs are and create that plan so that you don't fall into a really bad place financially. So.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great programs out too that assist if a veteran needs treatment for their injuries too. And that's one of the programs that we do too. If your family, the veteran needs assistance with treatment too, we can assist normally during that time frame too. And I know a lot of great nonprofits do that too. And did you want to add anything more about the farmers?
Yeah, I don't know how many people on the call happen to have a farm, at least with my family. So my husband's actually a beekeeper. We're in Northern California, and he started a bee business, which number one was not in our financial plan. It wasn't something that we really prepared for. So I definitely don't recommend jumping into a business like my husband did. Luckily for him, the demand for pollination services in Northern California is just through the roof. So if you ever want to be a beekeeper, come move to Northern California, and it's the place to be. But definitely the agricultural community was hit very hard by the pandemic. I mean, if you think about the fact that we weren't allowed to go to restaurants, think about the restaurants and where do they get their food from? They get it from the farms. And so there were a lot of farmer veterans that were hit very hard by COVID. And there were also a lot of farmer veterans that they were using their full-time employment to start their farm. So they were using that as kind of a funding source while they got their farm started, and then they lost their job. And so they no longer had their job. So they really had to shift from starting their farm business to, okay, I'm in, survival mode and I need to find another job. So that was particularly hard. The USDA is offering like USDA loan forgiveness. There's a lot of information. It's not straightforward. It's something that obviously is case by case, but the COVID definitely hit farmers hard. I mean, I think it hit small businesses hard in general. We were lucky. We were fortunate enough. Again, like my husband's beekeeping business was not really affected just based off our location, but there were so many that were. So we're very fortunate that we're doing okay.
Great. Yeah, I think a lot of just overall job and just everything, the systems, the VA was closed down for a lot of places, and that's, a ripple effect of people getting out right now, and stress levels are so high and people can't get in to see their providers, or it's just remote, or all of that. So it's just a big ripple effect with even being able to work and having income coming in and not being able to reach out to normal agencies that could be closed because of the pandemic too. So, and
Right.
then the ripple effect of, if people aren't working, are they donating to the nonprofits? So, it's a very unusual time. But I do think there are ways now that are a lot easier to find jobs remotely from home. So that is a good thing for caregivers right now. If you were thinking about working from home, I think there's a lot more job offers coming out now for remote work, and people are realizing it's an easier on their economic pocketbooks to have their employees work from home too. So that is a good thing for caregivers, that you could possibly get a remote job now. There's a lot of high side hustle gigs too that people are starting. I was telling Isa earlier, there's a lot of awesome new opportunities out there, y'all, to make some extra cash from home, but please check it out with the Better Business Bureau first before you make that jump. But man, look, do some research, go on YouTube. TikTok even has a lot of people telling you how to get jobs, but just make sure you do your research, and don't be afraid to make a little cash, and help plan for your future, plan for a vacation. A lot of people are working overseas, y'all, doing traveling jobs. I want to do that too.
Oh my God. It's funny, you're talking too about like the money that you might save, because if you are able to pick up one of these kind of side hustle jobs or remote jobs, then you have additional income coming in. And I think a lot of people tend to prepare financially for like the hardships, right? But they don't prepare financially when they have, when it's good, when they have extra income coming in. They don't really plan as well with that. At least I know in the past, we haven't always thought of like, oh, we have this additional income, what do we want to do with it? That's always a conversation to have too. And that can be a tough conversation too. And I know you and I have talked about this, Michelle, where my husband wants to buy a boat. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't know if a $70,000 boat is in our budget this month, but you were coaching me offline on how to have those difficult conversations that I was taking notes when we were talking about it, because it's a conversation that I need to have.
Yeah, it's funny how different goals are, or priorities are. And I think a lot of times though, a lot of military, it seems like, are like, you only live once, so let's go for it, type of personalities.
That's my husband.
Yeah, sometimes you have those awkward, challenging discussions about how you don't need an extra gun.
You don't need another one.
I would like to save money for emergency savings, if that's okay. So yeah, and sometimes you just have to give and take, right? So make those decisions about what's best for your family, and move forward. But I think there's a lot of advantages to working from home when you get to spend time around your loved ones, work from home, and then yeah, have that extra income coming in maybe when the kids are sleeping. I don't know. Because I know a lot of you guys are like, work an extra job. I'm doing an extra job with these 3 kids at home. Yeah, that's probably not for you then, because that's
Yeah.
a whole other job in itself.
That was definitely me at the
You
beginning.
want
I was
kids to
like,
go
"Oh,
back.
not doing it.
So,
It's too
yeah.
hard."
We have a lot of good conversations on the chat, but I think we're about winding up on our time.
All right. I can get in here and start to pull in the close. This has been a great conversation. Thank you both. And yes, the resources that have been in the chats has been incredible. In case any of you have missed it, we will be compiling all of that after, all of the resources afterwards and posting that on our website, which is also part of my closing. So Issa Marie, Michelle, thank you both. I know that you've also provided your information so that everybody can get in touch with you. But for everybody else, if you have any other questions, you can email individuals or email us at psycharmor@support@psycharmor. That's where our clinical support, and also really it's Jenna and her team will be there. As I had stated before, we will be sending you a brief survey. Brief, promise, super brief. It's not going to be like hit a pop-up, another pop-up, another pop-up. And it is really important, and we really appreciate you guys taking the time and filling out that survey. It really does inform what we do for all of you in the future, what we're able to curate. It's also how we are able to get these 2 wonderful individuals to come on today, and the topics that we decide. So our next Conversations with Caregivers will be a webinar on April 1st at 7 p.m. Jenna, what's the topic on that one? I just put her on for the next webinar.
That one's on sleep, the importance of sleep.
Sleep.
for caregivers.
Oh yes, that's sleep. That's going to be a really good one. Well, they all are. So yet another great pandemic conversation, right, about sleep. So we hope that you will all join us then. And I'll just real quick, any closing comments from either of the 2 of you?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and say, for my family, what worked better for me for having these hard conversations about finances is really taking the perspective of a caregiver, really understanding my husband's limitations and, how I can better have that conversation with him. So have the conversation, talk about it, just be aware, when you're a caregiver, be aware of the limitations that your veteran might have. And work around that, as I'm sure we all have to do with everything. So that's it. And thank you for the invite. I'm so happy to be here.
Yay. Yeah, thanks for coming, everybody. I had fun. And if you're interested in financial wellness counseling, just hit me up at hopeforthewarriors.org and apply for services. It's completely free. And thank you, everyone.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Great to see everyone, or see names at least. Thanks again, Michelle and Issa Marie. It was great to see you tonight. Take care, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.